up, sports fans. Your favorite sportsbook, BetUS.com, is back for our 28th year of NFL action. With the industry's biggest sign-up bonus of up to 200%, BetUS offers our members the opportunity to cash in on all your favorite sports, including NFL, NBA, MLB, and more. We've also got hundreds of new casino games, including the coolest new European slots, and our live dealers are waiting for you at the table. Sign up at BetUS.com today to get into the action. BetUS, where the game begins.
And now, broadcasting live from Las Vegas, the Snake Sports Talk Show with Jake Silva starts now.
Here we go, ladies and gentlemen, and we are live on a Tuesday night here on the Snake Sports Talk Show, wherever and however you may be watching and listening. Thanks for making us part of your day. We got so much to really break down. So last night, Monday Night Football, Bengals come away with a win against Dallas. There's some arguments of some truths up out there, but college football talk, also Major League Baseball winter meetings has been unbelievable. We've got big contracts to talk about. We're going to get to that all here tonight. No Chase tonight, so it'll be a solo show from here on. So let's talk about it. So, of course, people, as we all know, who have followed the show, is now on Rogue Media. We will have everything all posted up on our brand new home for the Snake Sports Talk Show. So stay tuned and keep up to date with that. So I want to talk about this because last night, I think, kind of proved a few things. So the Dallas Cowboys and the Cincinnati Bengals. The Cowboys, as you know, the two teams that I watch for in the NFL draft this up and coming year is going to be the San Francisco 49ers and the Dallas Cowboys. Dallas, as you know, lost three key pieces on their roster. Overshown, BB, the offensive lineman. It's not looking good for them. But you would hope that the Dallas Cowboys really rejuvenate this roster because they need to. And it's like I said, it's not a roster, in my opinion, that looks competitive, especially with the offensive line and the toll that they've taken with injuries and such. But the other thing is, too, their run game, not as great. But even with a backup like Cooper Rush, I mean, they still were able to put points up on the board. But then this is what also shifts in to talking about the Cincinnati Bengals. I love watching Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. But the other thing is, they are going to be losing T. Higgins by the end of the year going into free agency. He's going to look for a big contract. I think everybody knows that. And so when I watch the Cincinnati Bengals, I cannot help but feel just bad for Joe Burrow. I mean, Burrow is doing any and everything that he possibly can, putting the team on his shoulders and trying to come away with wins to keep them competitive. They're just not getting there. And what's hard about it is the team is 5-8, and they're outside looking in, trying to get into a playoff spot. But to be honest with you, I don't think this does not look like a playoff team. That defense, and here's what's different. Like, you could see the difference. Joe Burrow putting up MVP numbers, 33 of 44, 369 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception with a rating of 112. And it's like the Cincinnati Bengals are just kind of taking that for granted. Jamar Chase, 14 catches, 177 yards, 2 touchdown catches, and then 1 to Chase Brown, the running back. So we know that they've had a multitude of changes on their offense with no Joe Mixon, and you got Chase Brown as the running back, who has a bit of promise, but I'm not entirely sold on it. And the defense all season long has been atrocious, and they've been giving up points. Like, the points that they have this year is god-awful. If I look at the team stats this year for the Cincinnati Bengals, and this is where things have to change, because this is a very competitive team when you look at it through and through. They're putting up 27 points per game against their opponents. But then they're also giving up 27 points to their opponents as well, which does no justice for someone like Joe Burrow. None. I would also make the argument that I think with the Cincinnati Bengals and the Brown family, and this has been proven and it's been known, we know how cheap that the ownership can be, which is what also makes it very frustrating for a lot of Bengals fans there, far and wide. Because that's what it is. And at the same time, the Bengals in a division with the Steelers, the Browns, and the Ravens twice a year, you cannot afford to be a team with the most talented quarterback and you're not winning games, especially in your division. You're not winning the games that you should. When I look at their entire schedule at 5-8 and they're third in the AFC North, they lost to New England. They lost to Kansas City, which was arguably a close game. Lost to Washington, lost to Baltimore, lost to Philly, lost to Baltimore again, and then lost to the Chargers and lost to Pittsburgh. And these 4 games, they got Tennessee, Cleveland, Denver, and Pittsburgh, which is so crucial. Which is why that the Bengals, no matter how much that they're fighting at, it's not going to be an easy journey road. There are things that need to change up. And for the playoff picture, you'll look at the teams that are outside looking in. The Bengals are 10. Outside looking in amongst the Dolphins and the Colts. And you've got the Broncos, Chargers, and Ravens who are in. And they're 5-8. They'd have to win out the rest of their games. They'd have to win out the remaining 4 and be 9-8. But here's also the downside. The teams that are in those 3 wild card spots have 5 losses. So that's what makes it even harder. But the Bengals have some serious plans they need to figure out on this roster. If I were the Bengals, I'm not bringing back that defensive coordinator, Lou Anarumo. I would much rather get somebody. And here's the other funny thing. I would even look into somebody like Robert Saleh, or maybe look into somebody like Matt Eberflus. I know most of you don't like hearing about Matt Eberflus, but as a head coach, he's terrible. But as a defensive coordinator, he's actually much better. And the defense with the Bears, regardless what you think, they're a very good defense. But Chicago's always had a very good defense. So that's no change. But I just think the Bengals really need to fix this up. Defensively, they're not entirely the same team, and it's wasting away a high talented wide receiver and a very talented franchise look quarterback, Joe Burrow. You got to make it better for him. So I wanted to talk about this from the Sunday night football game between Kansas City and the Chargers. So Kansas City, they win the division for the 9th straight year and are proving that they have had such a legitimate run in the AFC West. And they win by a doinker. So Kansas City, what most people are realizing, they have been tampering with so many close games. But you know who else was also doing that? The New England Patriots. They have won so many close games. And the reason for that is because those are crucial games that when it comes close to a 3-point margin or more, those are the wins you are going to be happy that you win those games. 1, 2, or 3 points, or even just one score possessions. Right now, the Kansas City Chiefs have a winning record with 1 scores or less. And that's a huge game changer. Not many people could look into that. They're all like, oh, the Chiefs, they're just lucky. They're getting these doinkers, and then they're not looking at, the refs are kind of giving them passes. I've been hearing the refs for far too long. And the Chiefs, honestly, when you look at it, I mean, offensively, they got pieces back. So that's what's one thing you can be happy for. But the other thing is, this is just who they are, is their identity. And not a lot of people can stop the Chiefs. Not a ton of teams. You saw Buffalo beat them. But the question is, does that then translate for Buffalo to beat the Chiefs in the playoffs? And everybody knows the same narrative. The Chiefs don't care about most matchups until they're in the playoffs. And that's what's the difference maker. But if you're winning these close games now in the regular season versus not winning them, that's what's crucial. I mean, we've seen teams who have had losing records by 1 scores or more. One team in particular who had been doing that, but I do believe there's going to be a change in their culture, and that's the Chargers. For so long, they have been historically a bad franchise, losing 1 score or less games in history. And boy, do Charger fans cringe when they hear that. But the Chiefs are doing the opposite. And I think a lot of that is credited to they have a great franchise quarterback in Patrick Mahomes, who doesn't get frantic when it comes to close games like this. And you saw that. Like with him being hit 13 times in that game on Sunday night, it did not shake away the fact that he was still ready in the game. He was still poised in the pocket, still managed to at least get the passes that he needed to, and get the team in field position. That's what's most important. So the Chiefs are just that good with it. So I know a lot of people look at, well, there's missed call amongst missed call and all the rest of this. But you can also not deny the fact that when Patrick Mahomes, when he comes into situations like this, I mean, that many drives in his career and getting the Chiefs offense in field position where they need to be, that's where you separate from the ones that are fun to watch, like we saw Joe Burrow, and at least like the great ones that can play out of their minds, to the ones that they just stand above everyone else in the league, and that's Mahomes. And they get Isaiah Pacheco back. The other thing that I also thought, which was interesting, is they went away from the run, which the run game with Isaiah Pacheco, it was actually working for them pretty good. But they passed a lot more. And I think a lot of that is because they were seriously going after the pass defense of the Chargers. So I thought this was a competitive game through and through, and I'll talk more about the Chargers here in a bit, because I would not be hanging my head if I am Charger fans far and wide. Like, brighter days are coming. But I think at this moment, when you got Patrick Mahomes and when you're witnessing greatness amongst you, this is what it is. And you know what? Why even fight that? Everybody keeps saying this team is lucky. I don't think it's luck. I don't even think that it's, the referees bailing out and giving them a pass. I think this is just who the Chiefs are. They've executed so many of these close games, and they're just so good at what they do. They're so good at what they do. So, and here's the other thing. You also look at You also look at the fact that Travis Kelce, yeah, he's old, but he could still get you a catch or two. He still can. And I just think that they've moved into this position to where they separate amongst the rest, winning all these close games. And Patrick Mahomes, once again, is building more and more and more of his resume of being arguably soon to be one of the greats that we would watch in our lifetime. There's going to be no doubt about that. And at the end of the day, there's no better duo than you would look at to trust in a spot like this than Mahomes and Andy Reid. Good stuff. You know, and it's remarkable to see this and witness it right before our very eyes that this team, and I know with what you're thinking. They ain't got no Rashee Rice. They ain't got nobody else. But that never seems to matter when you watch a guy like Patrick Mahomes. That doesn't seem to matter at all. And what they're doing, what I also think is pretty impressive, is that they are taking everything that each team tries to throw at them, and they're using it against their will. And that's just who they are. You could play, like, here's the thing. That Denver game, that wasn't luck. That was just solid execution on blocking the field goal. That's really what it was. And you could say it was pure luck or whatever. I don't think it's just luck. I think this is just who they are. They come in, clutch situations, they win those battles, win those margins, and then they go into next week against the next opponent and go right into the playoffs and probably pick up where they left off. Now, there are some teams in the AFC, though, like if we look at the Steelers, if we look at the Bills, and we look at other teams in the AFC, there are also some teams that could be they could be a threat. But I'll promise you this, though, and this is where I'll talk a little bit more about the Chargers. Even if you think like this matchup in particular, even if the Chiefs won, I would not want to face the Chargers for a third time. I just wouldn't. And especially with a team that is the worst wide receiver and tight end room in the league, they still managed to keep that game a 2-point margin. And they came in the third quarter, scored those 2 touchdowns, and then get a field goal. But the defense, was playing their arse off. They were keeping that margin close. And it's unfortunate that when you get into these stretches and Mahomes, once again, over and over and over and over again, keeps getting first downs, how could you be expected to stop that? It's hard. It's the same thing that we looked at with Tom Brady. When Brady would get into these drives, hard to stop it. So I know everybody doesn't like hearing about the Chiefs over and over again, but that's where I honestly will respectfully give them their flowers. Is when it comes to drives like this, it's really difficult to stop the momentum that Patrick Mahomes and company has been doing all season long, and what I think they may continue to do. But I'll guarantee you this, if the AFC teams don't figure out a way to stop this team, they're in big trouble. And this was a team last year, not that talented. And yet, they went and won a Super Bowl for the second time in a row. Now, we know these three-peats are not easy, but usually you have to account for all the other teams around you. I think the most completed team that you look at, and yeah, they're decimated with injuries, is the Detroit Lions. And then you look at Philadelphia, who's also been up on fire, but there's question marks about them too. So that's my one big thing. So it'll be interesting to see how this runs. Good stuff. We got a lot more to talk about. College football playoff bracket is officially out after championship weekend. It was so much fun. The committee, I feel like the committee got it right. I'd like to see, because I know Chase, if he was on tonight, he'd be happy. He'd be smiling really heavily if he looked at it, because he knows Bama being out, like the team, so happy that like Bama is out of the playoffs. But you know what? Regardless of that, Bama is going to find a way to change this up. They have to. I feel like Jalen Milroe, in my opinion, when I see this, I mean, the team, clearly, you and I both know, this team, they were not even suited for the playoffs. Not even close. So to me personally, I think the Crimson Tide, they need to fix up their offense. Jalen Milroe's not the guy. I think at the end of the day, what Kalen DeBoer is trying to find is he's trying to find his pure pocket passer like Michael Penix. So I'll talk more about that. Plus, also talking about the winter meetings for Major League Baseball as well, right up around the corner. All right. Well, guys, it is the season. It is the season of giving itself. The holiday season is amazing this time of year. And the best gift to give for many of your peers is giving them the gift of an experience of a lifetime when choosing BetUS as arguably one of the best sports books in the country for over 30 years. BetUS always gives you the best deals and the best analysis to keep you on the edge of your game. And also, one of the best gifts of ever is giving you your own account manager so that you get the best of what BetUS has to offer. And at the same time, giving you many different ways to win. Daily contests, also their award-winning sports book as well, seeing what all is on the action for the NFL, NBA, college football playoffs as well, and then also NHL action. And you don't want to miss out on the great opportunities that we've got for you. BetUS, when you sign up today, $50 or more to your deposit. For the first 3 deposits, you get up to 125% bonuses. With that, tripling its way up to getting the bonuses of up to $2,000. And who would not want to fight for that? Who would not want to get onto BetUS, sign up, and find ways to win the ultimate prizes every single day with daily contests and also some of their best sports book lines in the country. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or seek therapy in your respective state, because BetUS would not want you to gamble this holiday season recklessly. They want you to enjoy the fun and experience it the best way possible for yourself during this holiday season. Go on to BetUS.com. $50 or more to deposit, 125% bonuses, up to $2,000. That's BetUS.com. BetUS, where the game begins.
Want to find your seat for the event of your choice but can't get one that fits your desire or your budget? Well, my friends, SeatGeek has you covered. SeatGeek is the official sponsor of the Snake Sports Talk Show. With a list of over hundreds of events to choose from, SeatGeek will assure you that you won't miss your seat with the amazing view of your choice at the most affordable price. Whether it's looking for your best seat in the house of your favorite sports team, finding live concerts that get you closer to your favorite artist, or enjoying your spot at your favorite live shows, comedies, and more, SeatGeek has it all just for you. Go online to SeatGeek.com or download the app on your mobile device through Google Play and the App Store. And as a special offer before checkout, use promo code SNAKESPORTS and save yourself $20 off of your purchase of your first ticket, and experience why SeatGeek is the most trusted ticketing app for your next event. Remember, that's SeatGeek.com and download the app on your phone with promo code SNAKESPORTS for $20 off and find your seat with SeatGeek.
Snake Sports Talk Show is sponsored by Muscle Tech, with hundreds of supplements and vitamins to choose from, all packed with 100% all-natural proven ingredients. You can be sure that Muscle Tech will give you the edge and the boost to train and look like your fit and healthy best, whatever your goals are. Try Muscle Tech today and use promo code SNAKESPORTS to save 30% off your purchases.
Looking for a show with the best takes and opinions? Want a show with the best coverage around the world of sports? Jam-packed with an all-star interview lineup? Then the best place to find it all, sports and entertainment, is right here. Join Jake Silva on the Snake Sports Talk Show, presented by SeatGeek and BetUS. Weeknights at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 Pacific on Sports Wave Network.
So the college football playoff bracket is officially out, and the committee, I have to agree, they got it right. And you know that they had to get it right for many reasons. So SMU and Clemson are in. Bama and Miami, they are out. And listen, I know everybody was talking about, this being so controversial. So here's what I'm going to talk about. Okay, so the college football bracket, this is what we have. So from 1 to 12, you have Oregon, Georgia, Boise State, and Arizona State in the 4 bye-week spots. So they will not play until they play the winners of all the teams that are playing. So that's the 4. Now, one matchup, Texas, Clemson. And then there's Penn State, SMU, Notre Dame, Indiana, Ohio State, and Tennessee. So those are the 12. Now, here's where I'm going to be brutally honest with you when it comes to the college football bracket. And this is where the committee at the end of this year, they're going to go back at this, because right now a lot of people feel like that they're going to be scratching their heads on this one. And I know they will be. But what the whole point of this is it wasn't just it being a 12-team playoff. It was how they put the bracketeering together. So the idea is that you would get all of the conference champions in the 12-team playoff. The other thing is you are also getting the best teams all season long, from strength of schedule to, their roster build. You were getting all of this. That was the idea for the college football playoff. And I know a lot of people, listen, you can't make everybody happy. It just doesn't work like that. It doesn't work. My idea with this is that I think they're going to go back to this, and they're probably going to look into how they want to shape it by next year's college football playoff. But this is what it looks like. So for my radio listeners out there, I do apologize. But for my audiences out there watching this show, so this is what it looks like as of today. So the college football bracket, 1 through 4, Oregon, Georgia, Boise State, and Arizona State. So Oregon wins the Big Ten. Georgia wins the SEC. Boise State, which is interesting about this, is they are part of the group of 5. So they win the Mountain West over UNLV. Now, this is where people are kind of getting the backlash, and here's what you also have to understand. I don't have a problem with Arizona State and with Boise State being in these bye-week spots, but here's where the backlash is. Everybody's looking at who have they played lately. Well, they've lost a 3-point margin to Oregon in week 2 in the beginning of the year. You remember that? Then the other thing that they also had to account for is they needed to get another ranked win. And that's what they did. If UNLV had not been ranked, this probably would have looked a little bit different. But once UNLV was a ranked team at 22, and I know a lot of people are like, well, ranks don't really matter. Well, in this predicament, that's what the committee looks at. They look at exactly the ranking wins, the strengths of schedule, and the other thing is, too, they also look at roster builds with Ashton Jeanty. Here's the other thing you also have to look at for Arizona State. And I have a very good friend of mine who I've had in a previous show before starting up the season, and he's playing on ASU's roster, and they win the Big 12 this year, and I'm very happy of it. I'm very happy that he's a part of this. But Arizona State, I could tell you right now, they are a team I do not want to mess with. I mean, Cam Scatabo, that kid is something else. 3 straight weeks with 3 tutties on the ground. That's a very strong run game. And Arizona State, I mean, I know when they come up against teams like a Texas or a Tennessee or an Ohio State or a Georgia or Oregon, it may look a little bit different. But they would probably make it an interesting game if it had been a Clemson, an SMU, maybe a Penn State, Notre Dame, and an Indiana. So both those teams, Arizona State and Boise State, you would have question marks on, but that's what the committee is going to honestly look at. And everybody who was like throwing in these lawsuits if Bama got in, well, guess what? The committee doesn't care about that. They don't care about those lawsuits. You can feel however you want to feel. Listen, fans are going to feel emotional for some of those reasons. But the committee knew they had to get it right. Bama hasn't played the best year. There were 3-loss team. The other thing is those 3 losses, they lost to Oklahoma, they lost to Vanderbilt, and they lost to Tennessee. The only big win they did get was against Kirby Smart in Georgia. But that's it. After all that, if they have not lost those games that they should have won, or Oklahoma and Vanderbilt, we would not have this conversation. But it's a new regime with Kalen DeBoer. But the other thing is, too, he was dealing with a quarterback who's an RPO build in Jalen Milroe. He wants a much more precise pocket passer like what he had in Washington with Michael Penix. And I think that's where they're going to go into potentially the draft, the transfer portal, and they might actually find a pocket passer there. Because there are some quarterbacks who have entered into the transfer portal. Now, that's where we're going to get a little bit more in-depth with it a little bit later on during the offseason. But this is what it is. So, again, they had to get this right. And I know for a lot of you, you probably would have been raising some hell if Alabama was in. But you know what? You can't fight. You can't fight over the fact that Alabama, much like Notre Dame and Georgia and Ohio State, they have a following. That's what most of you are fighting. And listen, I'll tell you this off the top of my head is how many times have we fought over the idea, why isn't Notre Dame in a conference? They look like a Big Ten football program that is not in a conference. They're independent. You want to know why? Because they don't want to give up that revenue stream that they have with NBC and with multiple others. But they also have a very grand following, not only just here in the States, but they have it internationally. So, and think about it. We had college football in Dublin, Ireland, right? Georgia Tech and Florida State in week 0. They have such a huge revenue share. And a lot of that is because it's a lot of the Catholic churches out there. So, and it's a Catholic school. So they get a lot of those big revenues there from international waters. But here's the other thing that you also have to look at. When I look at all these teams in the 12, if you asked me how I would see this college football playoff really kind of pan out, and it may not happen, but it's a possibility, is that Ohio State, you already know, they lose this game to Tennessee, Ryan Day's fired. And rightfully should be. I'm not going to end up continuously trusting on a coach. I don't care if he's 45-1 against everybody in the college football realm. But when you're 1-7 against top 5 ranked teams, and not to mention you're also 4 straight losses against Michigan, of all teams that you have a hard time really going toe-to-toe with, because Ryan Day is a little bit sensitive when the narrative is they play too cute, they play a little too finesse, they don't really put their nose on the ground with ground and pound football, and they don't get physical. That's where he plays, he coaches at his worst. And you see that. Now, I don't know if that may end up happening, but I like Tennessee's defense. I think when you get a freshman like Nico, their quarterback, he might get a little bit frantic. And again, Tennessee's building something pretty interesting. That's why in the SEC, I mean, how could you argue that with a big powerhouse like this conference? So I feel like Ohio State might sneak away with that. It may be looking a little bit ugly, but then they have to face Oregon. Then there's Notre Dame, Indiana, and I'll be honest with you, Indiana has played very good football this year. But I do believe Marcus Freeman and the defense that Notre Dame has put together can end up playing well against Indiana. I think that might actually be one of the best games we might see to start the playoff, the first inaugural 12-team playoff. That would be the most exciting one. When I watched SMU against Clemson in the championship, SMU, I mean, they came back in a big way. Do I believe Clemson should be in there? Not really. Clemson in the last few years hasn't quite been the same program, and this is with Dabo Swinney, but they're in there. And my thing is, Penn State with Abdul Carter in that defense against SMU, I think that'll also be another exciting game. But I also do believe that Penn State will do whatever it takes defensively to rough up SMU. I really would. Just tells you a lot about the competition in the ACC and then when you play a Big Ten or an SEC school. Then you've got Clemson, Texas. I think Texas, that would be a wrap against Clemson. So then it gets into Ohio State, Oregon, Notre Dame, Georgia, Penn State, Boise State, and then Texas, Arizona State. In my opinion, the way I see this happening, I think if Ohio State was to face Oregon, and now these are all neutral sites. These aren't in home field. The outsides, that's how they're doing it. They're doing it in home field spots, and then these ones will be neutral sites because they'll be bowl games. So your guess is just about as good as mine, but I think that if Ohio State was to face Oregon again, of course Ohio State would want to get payback against the Ducks. But I'll be honest with you here, I think Oregon, they've proven to themselves all the way through and through, offensively, defensively, they're just kind of on a roll. And regardless how, Dylan Gabriel, how he's playing, I mean, he's making everything work. So that's the bottom line. But I believe Oregon, if they were playing again, I think Oregon would end up beating Ohio State, which would keep Ryan Day's job for another year. Georgia would probably expose that Notre Dame defense. And then you've got Boise State, Penn State, which is an interesting one because Penn State with their defense, they're going to do whatever it takes to box up Ashton Genty. And boy, is he fun to watch running the football. But I believe that game would maybe get close enough. And I don't know. I don't know who the winner may be. I may have to come back into that. But then you got Texas, Arizona State. And for as much as I like Arizona State, as much as I like them, I don't know if they may end up having enough to beat Texas. It would only take situational play to beat a program like Texas and what they have. So I think the committee got it right. And you knew the committee had to get it right. They could not afford to flunk this. I know I know that if they added Alabama to this 12-team playoff, I would have never been surprised because they would have found any and every justification to putting Alabama in the playoffs. They would have. So to me, I think this was the right idea. This was the right thing they did. And this is the thing. This is the first year of the 12-team playoff. And yet people still can't get right. They can't get it right. So I think this was the right thing to do if you were the committee. Now, they probably will end up having to resurface this back again at some point to really kind of get this right, because a lot of people are like, why is Boise State, Arizona State in those 2 bye week spots when you're saying you want to put the best teams in there? And I think arguably this is what they did. They felt like these were the best teams. Get over it. In my opinion, and like I said before, I feel like the college football playoff is just like the Met Gala for a few reasons. Because in this predicament, the playoff was meant to be that teams that were on the outside, like Boise State, like Arizona State, the teams you don't usually see, even when they had a 4-team playoff, the teams you won't usually see, they're in there, right? And it gives them an opportunity to see what they got. So why not? Let's see exactly what Boise State, Arizona State, SMU, what they've got. Let's see what they have. Even Indiana. But I feel like the teams that may be threats in here could be Boise State, Arizona State, and probably Indiana. But all of that is going to unfold by the time we get into December 20th, when the playoffs officially commence, and we'll see by how the college football playoff is really going to take. We're really going to see exactly how this will unravel. We really will. Time now for the news.
This is the Hot Press.
So, bad news for the Dallas Cowboys, and talking about their linebacker Overshown. So, after the loss against the Cincinnati Bengals 27-20, linebacker DeMarvion Overshown has torn not just an ACL, but he has torn multiple ligaments in his right knee. And what it showed from X-rays and more is it shows that DeMarvion Overshown has torn an ACL, an MCL, and a PCL in his right knee and is scheduled to have surgery this week. His season is over. And when talking about this, owner and general manager Jerry Jones, what he ended up saying about this, talking about what a heck of a season that the linebacker has had this year. Here's what broke down after the news hit. I don't know at this time the time date on his rehab, but I just can't tell you how bad I feel for him, because he's just been through that mental and physical rehab on his other knee. It's the toughest time for a player, and we all see the loss and know what it's going to mean for us in our remaining 4 games. Bottom line is, it's really sad that he's having to have this surgery for him as an individual and obviously us as a team. So Overshown, who has had a heck of a year, and also a lot of people have also expressed it. Micah Parsons, head coach Mike McCarthy. So Overshown is the Cowboys' second leading tackler. It just became the third Cowboy since 1982 to record at least 5 sacks, an interception, a fumble recovery, and a forced fumble in the same season, joining DeMarcus Ware and Greg Ellis. So losing a guy like that, that's hard. So everybody in Dallas is feeling the pain. And as I've said before, I think if you're the Dallas Cowboys, I would throw this in. That's 3 key injuries that the Cowboys had suffered last night. And this is just not their season. It's over. And I think if you're the Cowboys, I would seriously consider accumulating picks. I would also seriously consider about getting some key pieces that you need to in this free agent market, because this just ain't working. It's just not working. So some news sources as we get into Major League Baseball. So some big-time news. So the New York Yankees, they have agreed to a deal with former Atlanta Braves starting pitcher Max Fried to an 8-year, $218 million contract, largest guaranteed for a left-handed pitcher. Fried, the 30-year-old who blossomed into one of the best pitchers in the National League over 7 years with the Braves, a two-time All-Star with a 2.81 ERA over the past 5 seasons in Atlanta, tops in the majors, just ahead of Corbin Burns among Major League Baseball starting pitchers over that span. Also had accounted for the Braves to winning a World Series championship in 2021. So the former 7th overall pick in the 2012 draft now goes into the Bronx with the Yankees with a big guaranteed deal. I think this is huge. What the Yankees are telling you right now, because they got rid of Clay Holmes, they then sent him to the New York Mets, so he signs up on a deal. And I think what the Yankees are doing, and this is what a lot of these top-ranked teams are doing. So a team like the Yankees, who got into the World Series and not only had just lost, but they want to get back into it. So they go get starting pitching because, like I've said before, the problem with the Yankees, now their starting pitching is going to be Garrett Cole, Max Fried, Carlos Rodon, Clark Schmidt, and Luis Gil. So that's a pretty impressive starting rotation. The only problem that they have is relief. And so, but that's for like a lot of other teams out there. When you have a very good bullpen, it really helps a lot of teams down the stretch and where they need to be, especially when you get into close margins, even in the postseason. So the Yankees, I feel like, are going into this season where they get another very good starting rotation arm. They get somebody who can be very impactful, who also has experience in the World Series and also has experiences in having a very good starting rotation. Now, the Atlanta Braves, they lose their top-notch starter, but this is where they're also in the National League are going to have to end up finding another top-notch starter. So this will be interesting for the long run. The Yankees getting another starter, beefing up the starting rotation. They want to get back into the World Series and in the playoffs. And I think this team, with the way that it's built from top to bottom, but the other thing that I have a question mark on is a bit of their offense. But hopefully they could figure that out down the stretches before the season starts. So a final news segment that I never got a chance to end up talking about. So the New York Mets, they're going all in once again. And that means that the New York Mets have signed the outfielder Juan Soto to a 15-year, $765 million contract extension or contract with the New York Mets. So what does this mean? The Mets want to go all in. And to me, Juan Soto, I mean, the kid is very, very talented, but $765 million. I mean, Steve Cohen, he's got all the money in the world to end up paying for a contract like that. And usually this is what it is with some of these techie owners. I mean, take, for example, you look at Steve Ballmer, techie guy, somebody who's not afraid to spend the money. So I think the Mets, now does that guarantee, the Mets did get into the NLCS last year. And they were, and here's the thing, they were competitive down the stretch. And boy, did we already sell our stock by the start of the season before the whole Grimace appearance and all the rest of it really unfolded. But that's a pretty good competitive team. Now, will this translate into a World Series championship? Does that translate into another get at the NLCS? Not sure. But all I know is they needed to have some stability in this roster, and especially on the lineup. So I think to me, Juan Soto's very talented. I also do think he is a very good, vital piece to this lineup. So it'll be interesting to see how it looks out. But you know what, though? Mark Vientos and several others that I have on this young roster looks pretty impressive to me. So I think in all the best regards, the Mets are very competitive, but we have seen this before. Don't look at it as this is a guarantee that they'll get into the World Series, because it's not that simple. I think, to me, they're competitive enough to get into the playoffs. Now, their stretch to getting into the World Series might be a little bit interesting, but we'll see exactly come down the road. All right, so that was the news.
This is the Hot Press.
So I want to circle back around to the contract signings in Major League Baseball. So the winter meetings, it's so much fun to watch. It really is. So we've seen a lot of moves be made. So for our radio listeners up out there, I do apologize once again, but looking at a lot of the transactions, because there has been a ton of moves. So to kind of recap it, the Texas Rangers, they re-signed Nathan Eovaldi to a 3-year contract. I think it feels like, to me, they like their middle of the pack kind of rotation guy. And look, Nathan Eovaldi, he's pretty good. But we know that he had a little bit of a falling out this past season, but is still effective on this roster. He's still effective in this rotation. So adding in somebody like Nathan Eovaldi, pretty smart. Keeps the stability for the Rangers. The Toronto Blue Jays, this is actually quite an interesting and yet a little bit of a silent off season for them. So they get Andres Gimenez and Nick Sandlin from the Cleveland Guardians for Spencer Horwitz. And what they're doing is that they needed a bat, but they also needed somebody defensively that could help out in that middle infield. So the Blue Jays, they got something really kind of cooking up from here. So another couple moves. The Detroit Tigers, they make a silent move signing Alex Cobb to a 1-year contract. They needed some rotation guys. The Blue Jays also signed a relief pen, Yimi Garcia, which I think is pretty impressive. So they end up signing him, who was actually pretty pivotal for Seattle. And now Seattle's going to have to end up looking for more bullpen pieces themselves. But the Dodgers, they re-signed Blake Trinan to a 2-year contract. But here's another thing that's also very interesting that I feel like, because with what I saw from Teoscar Hernandez, the Dodgers do this yet again. And they signed Michael Conforto to a 1-year deal out of San Francisco. And last year, he was at .237 batting average, 20 homers and 66 RBIs. So he actually had a decent season with the Giants. But what the Dodgers always look at, and I think that's what's also pretty impressive about Andrew Freeman, is he will find hidden gem guys that could turn around, and then they're proving to themselves that they're big-time stars. That's what it is. So the Dodgers getting Michael Conforto and especially spending all that money where they got Blake Snell, they re-signed Blake Trinan and several others. They got the money to do so. But at the same time, they're figuring out a lot of this stuff. The Mets, they got a rotation guy in Frankie Montas. So not only with the Juan Soto contract, but they get Frankie Montas, who I thought was a pretty good rotation guy, probably going to be middle of the pack there, that could really help out the Mets on their rotation. And then the other thing is the Texas Rangers get a catcher, Kyle Higashioka, who I think is a very good utility catcher there, that gives you an extra option in case if something were to happen to Jonah Heim. So, and another very good bat. Then the A's, they go get Luis Severino, a starter for 3 years, which I thought is also interesting. And lots of people, so the end of the year, at the end of the day, and a few things to wrap up before I go even further. So the Mets signed Clay Holmes to a 3-year contract. So he stays in New York, but he goes into the other side. But I think this could be pretty good for the Mets. They're trying to power up all these impactful guys that will keep them in postseason contention. Then the Giants signed Willy Adames to a 7-year contract, which I'm not sure how this is going to work out for the Giants moving forward, but a very good versatility in the middle infield. And then here's the other thing that a lot of people are talking about because of how young this roster is. But the Baltimore Orioles made 2 signings. They signed Gary Sanchez to a 1-year deal, and they also signed Tyler O'Neill to a 3-year contract, which Tyler O'Neill, another extra bat in this lineup and on this roster, why not? So there are some very good key moves here that lots of people are not talking about. But the point that I'm getting at to it is, and this is what's fun about watching the winter meetings every single year, is that you're going to get the teams that you know are going to spend the money. And the teams that don't, you're just going to basically scapegoat the teams that are spending the money rather than, scream and yell at your ownership. Like I take, for instance, a lot of other teams like Pittsburgh. Okay, the Pirates, we know their ownership doesn't usually spend a whole lot of money. But then look at the Washington Nationals. They get the number 1 overall pick in the draft lottery, and they may end up going and getting the next top-tier talent. But usually sometimes what's different like that than the NFL is it's not like the NFL where these players, they're ready to play right out of the gate. This would usually be like about a 2 to potentially a 3-year project. And that's what's different. But if you're a team that's not spending a whole lot of the money, stop blaming the Dodgers, stop blaming all of these other top-tier teams. Get with the program. It's 2024. And what most people like, and this is also a given rule as well. Teams that spend the money, usually it's money well spent. Okay? That's always the golden rule when you spend the money. All right, everybody knows that. And to me, like I look at teams like Pittsburgh, I look at teams like Washington, a lot of these, and even the teams, even the Tampa Bay Rays for all that matter. I mean, how many times have we looked at the Tampa Bay Rays? They were a very competitive team, and I never, ever question about their starting rotation or their bullpen. Their pitching staff always seems to be top tier every single year. I don't know what it is. Proof is in the pudding. But teams that aren't spending the money, those are the ones I would hound at their owners. These are billion-dollar techie company owners that if they don't spend the money, this is what happens. You get piss-poor results. And then when you look at the winter meetings and you look at all these free agent signings in Major League Baseball, which is what we're seeing right now, I mean, the Orioles are spending money. You know how many years that we've been looking at the Baltimore Orioles and we're like, good God, why do they not spend any money? Now they're doing it. They're getting into the program. All I'm saying is, you know with what you get when you spend the money. Okay? And usually if you want top tier quality stuff, like we're guilty of this. We know that we're a caffeinated society when we shop on Amazon and we start shopping at a lot of these top tier companies here. But think about it. We're not going to not spend the money on top tier quality for bigger, better results. That's common sense. That's the golden rule. So again, you want to be mad at somebody, be mad at your owners if you're not spending the money. All right, we got to wrap the show up here. Appreciate everybody who's been on here tonight. What a show. We should be having Shakes back up on here this week. We got a few more things to talk about all week long, more prime predictions, so much more. And of course, the new home of the Snake Sports Talk Show, Rogue Media Network is where we are a part of. Like, follow, subscribe, hit the bell button, keep you up to date on future and past episodes. This is Jake Silva signing off, and we'll see you guys on the next episode of the Snake Sports Talk Show. Take care and have a great night, guys.